MCB, moderator of the session, welcome you all to the fourth session of the series. Before we start the session, a few general instructions. Please keep your videos off and mics muted at all times. The feedback form will be posted in the chat box by the end of the lecture of the speaker and will be open for 1 hour after posting. Kindly fill it by then. Questions and doubts on the topic can be posted in the chat box, which at the end of the lecture will be put forward to the speaker. For today's session, we have Dr. Angad Rao enlightening us on the topic, a career journey from research to medical affairs. Sir has done his BSc from St. Joseph's College in MCZ batch 2007 to 2010. He then later on did his MSc in biochemistry from University of Hyderabad. In 2012, he was selected for a research scholarship by National University of Singapore to pursue his PhD in cancer pharmacology, where his project had 2 stages. The first one, discovery phase, identification and validation of cancer-relevant orphan G protein-coupled receptor OGPCR GPR19. The second, translation phase, developing blocking antibody for a validated OGPCR target GPR17. Thereby, Sir continued his interest in breast cancer and pursued postdoctoral fellowship in NUS. His research, published as 2 research articles, 1 review paper, and presented in conferences, has provided important contributions to the field of G protein coupled receptor and their role in carcinogenesis. After 8 years of research journey in academia, he decided to explore new career opportunities in areas such as innovation management and medical affairs. He is currently a medical science liaison for oncology and immunology therapy areas at DKSH, Singapore. Sir, we are indeed glad to have you here today with us. I could now like to hand over the stage to you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Subhanjan. That was a very nice and quite a detailed introduction. And thank you so much. And I would like to thank all my teachers, your teachers who have invited me today for this talk. And it feels really nice to be back to St. Joseph's, despite it being virtual, but it's already been close to 10 years since I graduated. Yeah, it's been more than 10 years now. And I would try my best to share some things which I have learned, or maybe which, or the mistakes that I have made in the past, these many years, and try to present them to you so that you need not necessarily make those mistakes and maybe can, have a smoother journey ahead. But I know I was asked to maybe present research work of mine, but as you pointed out that it's been several years since, or maybe it's been a few years since I stopped being a researcher. So once a researcher, you continue to have that aptitude, but I don't do any kind of active research. So I wouldn't be presenting anything from my research during the PhD or the postdoctoral time, which was on GPCRs, as you mentioned. And that is something which, instead of doing that, what I have designed, or maybe there's a few slides which I would like to be presenting to you, is on career navigation. And I have even changed the topic a little bit, which I was not able to inform about medical affairs, because I felt that the medical affairs which I'm doing, or that kind of journey or that position, will be much later on, and it may not really necessarily be relevant for you at this stage. So I have tried to alter this talk so that it fits all the people. I believe that most of you are undergraduates or postgraduates, and given that, what I would be presenting would be steps where you can perhaps choose, or use or apply those things to either go ahead in maybe a research base or something different, but we will check that once I start presenting. And let me start sharing my screen here. Okay, before I go further into the talk, I would like to ask all of you, and whoever wants to start sharing, maybe they can switch their cameras on. It always feels better to be speaking to people. And apart from that, I would like this talk also to be more interactive, because I do not have a lot of extensive content to be speaking on to, and I know that it's a Friday evening anyway. So if you would like to stop me at any point and, ask me questions or ask me anything, what I did and or you would need any advice, please feel free to do that. And it need not be kept at the end as well. So you can just, open your mic and start asking any kind of questions you like. So let me just start sharing my screen. So can everybody see the screen? At least somebody can just let me know if it's all there.
Yes, Angad, yes, we can.
Okay. So let me start. So this particular slide is the one where, the talk is about navigating through career choices. And I know that most of you are, or at least all of you are life sciences or graduated or going to be graduates. So there will be a lot of options which will come in front of you. So, and that at times can be very confusing. So I think from my experience, when I was doing my graduation, I didn't have those many choices, but now there are a lot of them. So we would try to see what are the areas where you can go ahead and how best we can, avoid some of the pitfalls or some of the mistakes that are usually made. So that is the gist of this talk, and let's start going ahead. I had forgotten that I had given this introduction before as well. Subhanjan helped me give this, but I would just go through this in a very quick snapshot. So this is what seems like a very linear and a straightforward journey, where I started with bachelor's at St. Joseph's, and that I finished in 2010, following with the University of Hyderabad masters, and then I went on to NUS Singapore for a PhD, and which was in the field of cancers, because at that point of time I had started off in microbiology, but ultimately I felt that where my interest lies, or what I feel, or this is something which also comes when you try to, attend many things like these talks, or maybe you have a lot of exposure via some of these activities. I remember it was organized in St. Joseph's as well. It was something which we had learned about several techniques in biotechnology, which had initially been one of the, primers of my interest in this research field. So I think attending these things helps us fully understand where or what we would like to choose. So considering that, I chose oncology or maybe cancer research as the field. And that's when in 2017 I finished this, and then I continued on a very, again, a traditional route, which was following the postdoctoral, which is just more of research, and it's an extension it's a salaried position, but it is an extension to research from the PhD, which is I chose to do again in the breast cancer field. And that was in 2020 when I finished my postdoctoral fellowship. So following that, I was at a stage where I wanted to next see where I really fit in. And I knew that maybe academic research, I had already done quite a few years of that. Maybe that was not the place where I wanted to be. And I felt that maybe this is not exactly suiting me. And that's something which also somebody must realize, and what their interest really isn't. So I decided to actually try out a few areas. One was innovations, and that is where I was trying to work closely with also with entrepreneurship, and apart from that, innovation management, because we would realize later on that a lot of new technology is being born right out of grad school and all those things. So that's the place where I was working, was with the hospitals and NUS. So trying to see how best we can commercialize technology, but that was for a shorter period of time. But then ultimately, I think at least now for the past year or so, I feel that my interest really lies in the medical affairs space. And that's what I'm currently doing, which is the medical science liaison. And maybe it may be a bit too early at your stage to, speak more on this, but this is something which utilizes most of your scientific training, or at least the educational background which you have gained. You do not need to do research, but it requires the scientific aptitude. So this comes with a higher degree and qualification, but this is what I currently do. So this is the journey which is continuing, and this has been in the past 10 or 11 years. So when you see this, it looks like what I have been doing seems like a very nice and straight path. And when we also design our path, when we try to outline for the next coming few months, and let's say years down the line, we always feel that is going to be a very nice, straight, nice journey, when, having some stops here and there, but ultimately it'll be reaching the goal. But what we do usually have, which gives us the complexity, is making assumptions. And I think that is something which we all of us will make. And I would like to maybe share what those assumptions are, which I made. And so what do these assumptions actually do is they make that straight journey become something like this. So this is not what we actually plan to happen, but this is what happens because we do make several assumptions, which may or may not be the right thing. And that really comes by either making them and then realizing, or having somebody speak to you about what they did and maybe learning from that. So you do reach your goal, and I think it would just take slightly longer, but it's always filled with some of these, instead of being a straight path, it's rather zigzag and bit more complicated. So I think this is what I would like to be speaking to you about for some more time, is what are the assumptions which I made starting all the way from my bachelor's time towards even now, and how best we can perhaps avoid them, and whether that all of that may not be something which you may necessarily make, but at least what I have done and how best they can be avoided. So I think this is the layout of the assumptions which I have made so far. And this is just some of the ones which I thought I'll share. I certainly may have made more, but I think the first one here is what I would discuss it with you first is, I think this comes very early on, and this is something which I'm sharing from my personal experience while I was studying the bachelor's at St. Joseph's, or even before that. So what is the number one dealing here? The first assumption of mine is trying to state is that grades is what we think is that getting the grades or the top marks is going to be the end all of the qualification or the education journey. And I remember myself going to my teachers and asking for a mark more, extra mark, and all those things. But ultimately, the grades, I do say that you need to have decent grades, but grades are not all that are going to define you going ahead. So when I say that, what does that actually mean is you have to complement this education of yours in several other directions, which are called the extracurriculars. I think that, such as which we are having right now, like one of you or many of you may have organized this or come up with this kind of concept of the kaleidoscope. So those are the kind of things. And I remember doing a scientific project back then, which was several, I think maybe teams had contributed to that. But those are the kind of things. And apart from that, participating in several of workshops or projects and not letting those chances go away are the ones which are going to actually enrich you. So grades are just not the complete measure of what you really stand for or what you have really achieved in that 3 years or maybe 2 years for masters, but it is the whole package of what you have been able to get. And why I say that is because this is what will be differentiating you when you go for let's say if you want to be applying for a position or a university position, maybe in India or somewhere else. And that's where you will be able to stand out using what all you have been able to do, because that gives you that the differentiating factor which helps you contribute more. It could be on several different aspects, such as having been in a very big team, let's say even in sports. So all of those are able to give you a perspective, which if you were just somebody who goes on reading the things and getting good marks and avoiding everything else, is not going to be getting. So that is one thing which I did to some degree, but something which I would advise is not the only agenda behind the 3 years or the 2 years that you spend on your degree. So that is one thing to be kept in mind. And then second is another thing which I had, or maybe several people may have, is when we do see a lot of people around us who are maybe speaking or maybe presenting very well, but they may or may not be having the exact technical knowledge, we feel that it's not something that's important to present well or speak well, but it's IQ which is all that matters, is what I had at least thought. And that is the one which will differentiate you and take you ahead. But IQ is certainly, it's important. What you are learning as what you're being able to apply, and that talent is important. But a very strong part of what's going to be coming ahead for you is EQ, which is the emotional quotient. And that is something which all the different places where you go to, such as any kind of company these days, or even biotech firms, or even research places, that's going to be a very, very critical part for you to progress in that journey, is having a very good touch with the EQ, which is involving several factors such as the skills which, how you communicate with people, how are you with other people or in teams. So that is something which is called EQ, and that has to be developed, and that is developed by taking part in such things where you are given an opportunity to actually present, state your things and get correction from your teachers, from your friends. That really helps. Presentation skills, communication. So don't let those chances, either by being shy or by being somebody who doesn't think that this is actually important. So don't let those go away. Those are very important contributors to your success in the world which is now. It may not have been that very important maybe decades ago, something of that kind, but now it's really crucial that you have both of these with you. So that's another assumption which I would ask you not to be having, and that would make life more complicated and lengthy, because you would be missing out on several opportunities where if you already had this skill, you would have already gotten maybe a position or the, let's say, job, or let's say if you were wanting to get into one particular enroll yourself in some PhD program, which also is, collaborative one, let's say, for that matter. So all those things are important. And I think the third one, which I have also been doing and which you saw from my trajectory so far, was 1, 2, 3, 4. It's just in a continuation in a straight line, acquiring degrees or education, but and always thinking that work or working or work experience in between, if it's inserted in between, is going to be looked not looked very positively at, or it's going to take you out or away, or derail you from the track which you have set on. But that's now not the case. So you can always decide to do something which is on the lines of what you have learned. Such, let's give you an example. Let's say if you were a master's student and you have worked in the case of let's say some genetic transfer, or all those things you have recently read, and you have been able to you feel that you're interested in biochemistry, but you could actually learn a lot by applying this, by working with a biotech firm, or as a research assistant or a research associate in a university, before you decide to take the plunge to go for a PhD as well. And why I'm saying that is, when you do this kind of work, you actually learn a lot of things which maybe PhD may not have necessarily given you right at that instance. So you could think of also taking a work experience break between between going for the next educational degree of yours, and that's something which will only add value to your next place where you go to, because by working in an environment such as a biotech firm or a startup for that matter, is something which would give you experience of what time pressure feels like, what working with people feels like, what having deadlines feels like. So all those things would be certain things in your armory which you can actually use later on, and only make you a better researcher if you decide again to follow PhD. And nobody really says that it's something that PhD has to be done early on. It can also be done a little later, let's say when you feel more into what you were doing and maybe want to just take it to the next step, and when you're very sure what you actually want to do with that PhD as well. So this is another assumption, that necessarily work should be only done once education is all completed. That's not the case, and this is you may not really have this assumption at all, but I felt that it's just worth sharing this as well. And I feel that combining these things so far, it's already going to be putting on your track where you are far more informed and better suited for any of the challenges which come out right after when you exit a college, like a very protected place like our colleges or universities. So I think these three assumptions, if perhaps avoided, are going to put you into a better place. And the fourth one comes at a more advanced stage, which is when you actually have done or will be doing a PhD. And I think many of us feel, even while doing PhD, I mean, there was a time when I decided, or I thought that I should not continue it and maybe just take a master's and go away. But you do persevere at times. But when you do think about PhD, a large number of times people think that PhD is going to be limiting your options, because you would then be stuck to something in the field of academia only. So that's what many people think, that the logical transition from PhD would be a postdoc and then assistant professor and so on. And let's say many people may or may not like to be doing the teaching, which is involved in all that, and then think, oh, this is going to be a waste. But don't worry about it, because if you really are interested in that research and what you're doing is of high caliber and it results in publications and presentations, there are several avenues open to PhD graduates apart from pursuing an academic journey. So that's the next part of what I would be speaking to you, is what we can do with the PhD, which limits or which takes us or which gives, or gives, what are the different avenues that are open to people who have pursued a higher degree like a master's or a PhD, and that are the different options. And this is completely for life sciences students, which I'm going to be talking about. So I just have some water. So how about any questions so far? Somebody must be wanting to ask something. I also used to be very shy and never ask anything, but maybe you can feel free to ask if you want. Okay, it seems that nobody has any questions so far. So what I'll do is I will go to the next part of it. I'm going back. Okay. So these are some of the things which I felt I would highlight as the alternate paths which you could make or enter with a higher degree, such as a master's or a PhD. And some of them could even be via your bachelor's degree as well. I'm not certain how many of you are bachelor's and masters, but this could apply for both the groups here. So one, which is my own place and which is what I do, so I have put it at number 1, is medical affairs and scientific communication. So this, I would have to say, that is certainly something at least going to be at an advanced degree stage, and this has a prerequisite. So let's say that people who do cross maybe masters or at least mostly PhDs could be the ones who could think about going into this space as well. And this is another space which is very up and coming, because there are several pharmaceuticals which require people like us with a scientific background who can, reason, who can have an analytical thinking, and are able to convey very high level, or I would not say high level, actually very complex data, scientific data, are able to process it and communicate, make it very cogent to all the people whom, especially the people such as the doctors whom they are going to be speaking to, or even patient groups. But that is the short description of what this is. And scientific communications, I'm not sure how many of you have heard that India is doing a lot of things such as the Cactus communication, which is a place where a lot of scientific editing and writing happens. And this is for those who have a flair in writing already. I mean, if you feel that you do write well and you like to write scientific things and edit them, so this could be another place where you could also think of taking your background and going to. And then second is the industry research scientist, which is easy to understand, and that generally means working for MNCs or biotech companies like Biocon, Syngene, P&G. So all of them require research scientists, because a lot of them are doing a lot of scientific development and research work. So that's another space. Even with master's degrees, you could be going there. Technical medical writing is a bit complicated, and I have written it here, but I'm not certain how medical writing works. But it would also be requiring a high level of scientific rigor, and I think that's something which you could also look into and could be on, overlapping with the scientific communications. Then many of you could actually be entrepreneurship. Is anybody here with an idea which is going forward for a startup, or does St. Joseph's have a startup cell or something of those kinds? If it doesn't have, but let's say you do have this kind of idea, because there are a lot of things which are coming up, and there are a lot of problems to be solved. So you can use that skill of yours and become entrepreneurs. And there are in Bangalore, Hyderabad. Bangalore is certainly a hub for entrepreneurship. There are so many startups which have come up from there. So there will be a very good support system if you would like to, harness that and take that biotech entrepreneurship. So that's another space where you can go. And you need not necessarily succeed in this entrepreneurship journey. You may certainly, but if it doesn't, but the learning which you get is invaluable. I would say that it's many of people count biotech entrepreneurship or any entrepreneurship journey as close to being an MBA. So that's how important it is if you would like to try your hand. And then is general project management, because you are doing several different things. Then healthcare consulting, if you have decided to join firms like Deloitte, PwC, and so many others. So they would be doing healthcare consulting, and there could be some more firms within Bangalore and India or outside where you could also look at consulting. And this is basically, again, going to be taking the skill which you have of communication and, processing a lot of data together and making sense of it and being somebody with a scientific aptitude. So that's where you could also be. Market research analyst is again something which, analyzes the different places or where, let's say, a scientific molecule or maybe therapy or something could actually be used. So that's another place. Then very interesting is patent law, and I have and attorney I wanted to say, so that's missing. But patent law is another place where you could actually be growing in, and that's a law degree, and it's very lucrative as well. Teaching is another option which you could also try your hands at, which is also a very great career option. And then you have regulatory and QC and assurance, which are all part of pharmaceuticals, biotechs, and so on. So all of these will certainly use your scientific training, your knowledge in microbiology, chemistry, in zoology, or whatever else is there. And all of these combined can also be alternate paths, whether you want to take them right now or whether you want to take them after your PhD or a research journey is all up to you. All of them welcome you at many of the stages that we have spoken about. So nothing that you would be missing the boat if you don't do it right now or maybe after a few years. So that's what I wanted to say as alternate paths, because this is not something which I knew when I was actually, going ahead. That's why I was just going ahead like with the blinders in the straight path, which I knew was the best, because that's what I thought was the only way out. I may have tried my hand at something else if I knew of all these. It's not nobody to be blamed, but now that you do get a exposure of what's there, so maybe you could all look at it and think of exploring these areas as well. So these are all growing and upcoming, and they require people, young people who do all of this, the science. So this is another competitive space, all of these where you could think about going. So now I told you nearly 10 to 11 different paths, and this must be confusing at this stage. I hope it is a bit confusing. Otherwise, I'm not somebody who is really should be giving the talk if you know everything by now. But let's say if you do think that this was confusing, I would have certain tips or certain methods which I have used in the past, which you can also apply as being able to navigate this, I would say, this whole maze of different things and what actually suits and doesn't suit you. So I think what we would, or what I have done, which has helped me narrow down to things like medical affairs or what I have been doing now, is I think the first part of this roadmap which I have designed, or which you can apply from this, is that firstly, I think whatever you are planning to go into next, you should be understanding that role really well. It's not something which you can just jump into and come out of it very quickly, because when you leave things, it doesn't look very good on the CV as well. So you must have some commitment. So before jumping into the wrong thing, you better understand what the role is. I have given this more because this was initially designed for medical, but so it's not job descriptions. It could also be a university position, let's say a research position you're applying to. You should be able to understand what that research is, who the professor is, what is the lab doing. It's just a broad example of things. Or let's say you're applying for a PhD position in the US, Singapore, wherever, India, and then also you should be reading very carefully about what is going to be expected out of you. Just not jump into it. So several blogs are there. There are people, groups, Facebook, and a lot of others. LinkedIn, if you don't have, you should really have it, because that's the place where a lot of people connect and communicate. So that's another place which can help you understand the role. And then network. I'm not certain how relevant is this network concept at the level of undergraduates, maybe more effective or more applicable when you are a master's student or going beyond. By network, I don't mean your friends, which you hang out with the canteen in, but those are good as well. But network is more things which are done with the idea that they will be professional relations. wherein you would be able to count on each other, or maybe take somebody's mentorship, or maybe get some advice, or even a referral for that matter when you're applying for something. So that is very important network, which is called network and networking. And that, in my, at least this place where I am, has no substitute, because everything, I'm in a rather smaller country with everybody knowing everybody. So in a smaller career where I am, but let's say this is always going to be applicable, and always there will be people whom you can rely on if you're in that space. So there is literally no way out of it. So people who are very shy of communicating, yes, it's very natural. A lot of us don't like to speak out of our comfort zone, but you will have to try, you will have to do this. And this, sooner you do, the better it would be than trying to do that when you are at an advanced age. But so try to build in with friends, or maybe find a group which goes out and meets people, people, let's say, whom you aspire to be, let's say in the next 5 years. Let's say somebody who's a research scientist, and you just try to ask them if you could actually meet up for coffee chat, we call this coffee chat, or any kind of discussion, and ask them for their time, so that you can learn from them how did they actually reach there, and you can also navigate based on them, and also develop this kind of network around you where you can always ask for help or guidance later on. Then try to be somebody who is taking all opportunities to present, and no, this is different. So this is presenting diverse skills on your resume. So I'm not sure how many of you have gone through this training of making a resume, or how well developed your resume is. As you are mostly at an early stage, it may not be that that filled up by now, but certainly start making one. There are several templates available online, and you can just start making. I would say that the Harvard University guide for CV, I think, is a good place to start. And that's a place where you can also use, and these are all freely available. So try to present the diverse skills you have on your resume and which are relevant. And I have to tell you this, that each place where you apply, you would be soon sending resumes to even a PhD position or application, or let's say it may be even required for a master's program. So all of them should highlight the skills very succinctly, and also the relevant ones. But you have to demonstrate, you have to show them that you have to keep it brief. Yes, it has to be brief, and it has to show them that this person has the skills that have been asked for in the job. So that goes to show that you have to tailor CVs specifically to the places you're applying. You cannot have one size fits all kind of CV approach. So that's going to go away. And it's better that you have a rough layout template, which you can always, remove a few points, add in a few things, and then send some, wherever you next apply, send them that kind of a CV, which is very directed towards what was asked. So that's important. And you should be able to highlight your collaborations. When I say collaborations, I come from more like, team collaborations, or maybe you have developed between MCZ or some other some other group. You have developed a program, or let's say being able to develop a scientific event. So those kind of things are collaborations. Any kind of authorship which you have with a team or a group is collaboration. So all of those things have to be presented and have to be written neatly, and so that somebody, moment they see, nobody gives more than few minutes to a CV, so they should be able to understand that. And then this is more when I had planned this for people who are planning to go into the medical affairs space, but clinical trials or disease area is not really something which you should be looking into as of now. But develop an understanding of whatever, let's say, is where you are going to be applying to. Let's say if you are going to be doing something which is very much related to immunology, so you better start taking some kind of program, or you join those summer fellowships, or try to take a internship at one of the many labs and universities that Bangalore has. And then you can get to develop the skills which will be very relevant to what you're going to be applying to. Wherever you apply that skill, you needn't have it completely developed, but some primer of it should be there in you. But that shows that you can build upon it, and you really had interest to grow from there. So that is important. So clinical trial was just an example because I had given this for another purpose, but it could extend to anything which you want to then go to. So identify is the last of the different 5 pointers which you can use to kind of navigate where you want to go, or if not navigate, at least make a very make a very focused attempt at what you're going to be doing next, and make it count. So that's very important. And then identify. So let's say if today you are deciding that you want to become, let's say, I will give my example, which is easier to give, is from the medical affairs as a medical science liaison, or any of those kind of things. And let's say you do not get it in the first few attempts, and that need not necessarily happen. But if that is the case, then you should not be somebody who is only going to be stuck on one particular thing. But if you do really want to be in that career track, then identify certain jobs which are on the periphery or which are closely overlapping that particular thing, which can be used as stepping stones. So that is very important also for us to be keeping in mind, that we may not get exactly what we want to do in that career which we are wanting to, let's say, starting off with even as an example of, landing a PhD immediately may not happen. But then don't decide that you just don't want to go ahead, or you just go on having futile attempts, but then start doing something in the field of research, which then can immediately improve your chances of getting what you really wanted. So in this case, medical writing, medical communications, or research in the industry, all are very closely associated with that career which was in my mind. So keep that also. So you need to have a backup plan which is bordering on or which helps you actually achieve what you really were setting out to go and get. So these are some of the roadmaps which will help you actually get quicker at getting what you want and what you have decided to achieve, or what you have decided to go ahead and get as a track or a career track. And it may be early as a career track for many of you, but the next thing after your graduation. So let's say that. And having these fallbacks and, a precautionary measure, or, having this network would help you save a lot of time and failure. So I think that is all that I thought of the career roadmap. And when it comes, finally boils down, we have so far seen that there is a lot of options available. And so there is that you can choose from now, and you need not be stuck with any one thing. Let's say if you do want to pursue research, it's fine, and other opportunities at a later stage are fine, and working before going for your next big education degree is also fine. But we have also seen how best we can, suit ourselves for the next role, or kind of next step which we are heading to. That has been shown by the career roadmap. And now finally, I think I would try to give you an example or a few examples of what are the things which are asked in these job descriptions, or even your university applications will also be having quite a lot of intense things these days. I'm not sure for PhD, but several other degrees usually ask for video recording of you, stating what you are going to be contributing. So all of those things are important skills, or are usually asked in jobs or university applications. And what I have picked a few examples of those particular things which are most commonly asked, and what you can highlight, thinking from your angle as bachelor's, master students, and the experience you would have had so far, how you can best answer or highlight, and how you can best fit yourself to those particular things. So you don't want to be in this kind of situation when somebody asks you to present your skills. So let's see how best we can actually avoid this is by this kind of a plan, or this kind of an example, these few examples which I have selected for you. So far we must have some question. Does anybody want to ask me anything?
There is a question posted by Andrew, our MSc student.
Yeah, I haven't checked the chat. Let me just check.
Okay. So,
I wanted to know that in this alternative path, can you use the bachelor's, master's to link up for entrepreneurship in healthcare management? So, good example. So what I believe the question is he wants to use his master's or bachelor's education to land or to go ahead in entrepreneurship. Am I right? Andrew, is that the question?
Just a minute. Andrew, you can go ahead and ask.
Somebody's asked me something which I may not have any answer for, but okay, let's have Andrew's question first. Yeah, Andrew, don't feel, please just ask me. It's just fine. You can't unmute. Okay, he can't unmute.
No,
So
I have
maybe,
given access. He can.
okay, so what I think is that at least what I believe, what I understood is I may not exactly have an example for master's students, but I do note that.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, Andrew, hi.
Hi, sir. My question is that I want to know that I'm interested in entrepreneurship in the future.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So using my master's and bachelor's, whatever it is, so I want to go for agriculture field where I can do something helpful.
Where you can grow something helpful.
Hello.
Is that the question? If you want
Yeah,
to do
like
agriculture related entrepreneurship, okay.
Yeah, sir.
So let's say that I'm not certain what your educational background will help in agriculture, but let's say if you do come up with something in the microbiology space, which, for example, is able to maybe reduce some kind of crop failure or maybe increase the fertility of the soil. Those are just examples, but that can be developed by several. So somebody's mind.
I guess
Is
you're
Angad cut off? Yeah.
Yes. How long have I been muted? So what I was telling was, what I was trying to explain to Andrew was that, let's say if you do come up with some kind of idea which is creative and is novel, it has to be novel, yeah, and you feel that it is able to solve a particular problem, then there are several places which are called, these are incubators where you can take your idea along with somebody else. I give you an example called Entrepreneurship First. It's an EF. Then there is Blue Chili. There are several others. You can Google incubators in entrepreneurship in India or Bangalore for that matter. And that's where you can actually take this idea of yours written down very well with some early elementary experience, maybe some proof, you have to have a proof of concept, a little bit of that. And that particular novel idea can then be incubated with that incubator, which necessarily means that they will be investing in you a startup or seed money, which is, let's say, $50,000 or something of those kind. And that will help you develop or maybe go to the next stage. So that is the kind of entrepreneurship journey you can then decide to go to. That's one which comes from my experience. And let's say if your university has an entrepreneurship cell, then they can also help you pair up with somebody who's wanting to either work with you, give you the lab space, or invest in you. So these are the major criteria which will ultimately give you anything out of that idea which you actually came with, right? So you need, from the idea, from ideation, you need to go to product. From product, you need to go and take it to the market. So all those things are the entrepreneurship journey. So that is the brief answer of your question. And if I know somebody, yes, I know a lot of people who have done from the PhD and they have joined just what I mentioned, incubators like EF, and taken their ideas where they've been paired with other people and developed it as a product. So that's how it happens. I'm not having real examples of master's or bachelor's students, but would be quite similar. Anybody with a novel idea is welcome in these incubators, young or old. So that's fine. Does that answer, Andrew, more or less? Okay, so what is the next?
Angad, we have one more question.
Yeah.
Yes, actually, we have disabled this option of unmuting
Okay, no
themselves.
problem, no problem.
Yes.
So the
So we
next,
have one more question from Hazel.
yeah.
Hazel, you have been given the to ask. You can go ahead.
Hi, Angad. Actually, I too finished my MSc from Joseph's, and currently I have an experience of 25 years of teaching.
Okay.
So I just wanted to know, for teachers like us who have, so many years of experience, and if we would like to change our profession, because I think teaching then and teaching now, there's a lot of difference. Students now have whatsoever, no interest, no respect. Actually, they think everything they can get it on Google. That's how they feel.
Okay.
They think Google is their only teacher. And somehow over a period of time, we are losing that, interest, how we actually started a career with. So with so much of experience in that field, is there anything that, we could do to this field of microbiology or research or any any field that is related to microbiology?
So this is a tricky question because it does seem that there has been, yeah, Hazel, thanks so much for the question, but it does look like there is, you have a lot of experience, yes, but what perhaps either you can re-innovate yourself is what I have seen in my experience of, having modules here is that a lot of it is very interactive by actually being more application based. So that's one place where maybe you could reinvent the teaching wheel and make yourself or the teacher in this question be somebody who is irreplaceable, if that was where we were heading to. But that is one place where we could think about going. And yeah, so I think, so maybe making the things which people are actually searching, you would have to search that and maybe present it before, and making it way more interactive and also more application based. I think this is what lacks a bit in India, is how we apply things. We have in here, when I was studying at NUS, we had a lot of open book examinations, because it doesn't mean that there were answers necessarily in the book, but the questions were such that you really never had to go and rely on the book as much, but on what was taught to you in the class is being actually applied. I think if that could be a shift which you could perhaps think of getting, is when maybe you would also find teaching new for yourself, and the students will find it new for themselves as an experience as well. So I think this is what I would give a suggestion, and also tying up yourself and the whole microbiology with more internship availabilities, wherein people can actually attain that particular classroom's practical function via really being part of a lab which does that on a more regular basis than being a one-time thing. So that is one particular place. And as I was telling you initially, I had, this exposure. I think Wajid sir had arranged this. This is a biotech. I forgot what it was, but it was a few days program. So some things like that, where you can, teach something very new and out of the curriculum, is also going to be very useful to you and fulfilling to you and useful to the students. I think this is what it means, and it just means maybe extra work. So that's how I would put it.
Angad, I would like to kind of come in and say, at this Bangalore University hasn't changed the syllabus. One thing, it's the same syllabus since I studied, and the same thing I'm teaching now. And now from an annual scheme, we moved on to the semester where in 90 days, you need to finish your syllabus, and students are only wanting what's going to come for the exam, right? You do anything extra, they're not interested, one. And more, as you said, the syllabus does not cater for anything that is innovative, that is application oriented, till they come to the last semesters. So to get them interested, and I'm teaching at a college where it is a women's college, and all of them come from under lower socioeconomic groups, and the college also is not funding much. So all the push comes only from my end, and they come just like to finish a degree, otherwise sitting at home they would get married off. So to handle a class full of such kind of students and to motivate every day is a tough task. And I'm the only teacher handling all the 3 years, theory as well as practical. I'm not saying I'm not ready to do it, but over a period of time, day in and out, when you have class full of such kind of, even if I have one student who's interested, who would ask me a question, I can come back and read 10 new books. And that is what I'm wanting to do.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am, I understand, but sadly, I myself am not able to really
No, I was just
contribute
thinking,
much to this, but
because you're talking about career option. If there are options for people to also shift, just not for those who just, just after MSc, PhD, those who are in one
Yeah.
career option, who can find something that could interest them and who can use
very
their
much,
expertise
very much.
in some other line.
Yeah, what I'll do, I think if I have for somewhat late career change, if I do find something, I may have it, I'll just send it forward and then maybe we can have another discussion. But I think there's another question which has come up, and
Thank you.
Thanks, no
Satya.
problem. Thank you so much. And how beneficial is having a double master's? And my personal opinion, it's not very beneficial. So there's not much achieved because what would you really say? Why did you do the two masters? So that's one thing. And you rather do a master's with research in India or just complement it with any kind of research training. We have so many different good universities, and we have a lot of options available. And or if you want to do something after master's, then you just rather do a PhD, or I think that's my opinion. This is not going to be that useful. So any further questions? I hope that answers the question. I have another question. In India, the pay scale of master's degree holder is nowadays equivalent to that of a bachelor's degree holder. Okay, that's sad. A PhD degree also holds no value without experience in the industry. So what is your take on doing a master's or a PhD with doing a bachelor's and then getting a job in the industry? Experience be better? Okay. This is a tricky question again, but what I would say is that I'm not certain how you came to the conclusion that there is perhaps you have seen it, but okay, I'm getting a lot of questions. Just a minute. I'll just try to answer this one. So what this says is, or it's asking me is that so if you feel that there is not that much of an importance given to PhD, then I'm not certain how that has come about, because they do seem to be having okay, if you do a PhD which has publications, and I have several friends in India who are doing very great PhDs and others, and they can then take it to the next stage by actually applying for a postdoctoral fellowship, which pays quite well because of the government sponsorship for that as well. Apart from that, you have an option where you could then take your PhD learning and join several of the new biotechs which we had initially covered, where you are really sought after, because India has become a very big place for biosimilar production, new technology. You had India being the hub of COVID-19 antibody production. So a lot of places where you can find yourself being applied and getting the kind of respect which you were asking, and also the salaries. And salaries, yes, they will not be the same for the scientific community as somewhere as paid abroad, but then it's also, all of these are relative things. But there are several options where you could do a good PhD and from many of the good colleges and universities, and then enter the space where you could actually become also an assistant professor, which also pays a lot of money. So I think these are good avenues which you could think about going. And the second part is, getting a job in an industry will not hurt you at all. And if it's an industry which is exactly related to the research work or experience you have, or where you want to go to, is only going to complement you. But just be sure about this, that if your real interest was always PhD, then working may, or if your work was intense, if your love was intense research, then maybe a work break could reduce that interest. But it may or may not happen, but it's not something that will harm you. So you can go ahead and give it 2 years or 1+ year or 2 years, let's say, to work in a place which is going to complement your next step. So that's what I would say for that. So I hope I have answered the question there as well. And the next one is, can MCZ be considered a triple major? No, it is not a triple major. It's also a 3-year degree. So does this prove to be a disadvantage when you look for masters abroad? Yes, you cannot move to most of the places like US or Singapore with a 3 years bachelor degree. MCZ, I mean, here should be bachelor's, right? Yeah, okay. So at least in my case, 3 years MCZ was a bachelor's degree. And yes, you cannot go for a PhD program with a 3 years bachelor. It has to be 12 plus 4. And it will not be considered, sadly, as a triple major, despite us doing triple the work. So that's one thing. And I hope I have answered that question also. And the next one is I was focusing on industry. By research I was doing, it's been very hard to find openings for freshers. And how should we increase our chances of being accepted as a fresher? A pharma company maybe. Okay, I would go to this question when I just explain some of these transferable skills, how they will actually help you increasing your chances from being just a fresher. And we have also learned that we had a lot of things that go into getting a new job, such as networking, making your job description align very well with the CV, which we will just discuss, and also being able to contribute something to that place where you're actually going to. I mean, nobody would want or doesn't usually give somebody totally having no relatable or no skill that can be built upon a chance. So I think you would have to prove that you have something, at least 20% of what you are wanting to build upon. So that's important. So we have seen those particular things as well as places where you could start and maybe not considered, maybe be considered more favorably. I think that's where we can how we can answer this particular question. And Dr. Jyoti has asked me, can we take the questions at the end? Okay, if you're okay, please go ahead. Yeah.
Angad, actually, we have a moderator who is going to read the questions at the end of the session so that the flow is not interrupted. Is that okay for you? We can just continue with the talk. At the end, we can take all the questions together. Is that okay for you?
Right. So I have answered till this point. Okay.
Yes, we have a team who are actually working on all compiling.
So we will do that. Fine. So let the
Yes.
questions come, and we are already close to 7:30. Okay. So let me go on to what this is, and what I'm now going to be speaking about would perhaps help answer the question which came about speaking or not being looked favorably as a fresher. So what we can do is to avoid such a situation. This would not be so easy. I'm not going to tell you that it's going to be a real walk, but how we can avoid this is by highlighting some of the things what we have done. And we should not discount what we have done as during our bachelor's or master's as just part of curriculum or anything else, but these are actually valid things which, when worded carefully, can absolutely be the things which somebody is looking at for. You just have to word it carefully. So let me just read out a few things which I found just by my quick search as what you would see when you're looking for more beginner or junior roles. Just saying that because most of you are very starting as bachelors and undergraduates or masters. So let's just see. So lead independent projects is one thing would be usually asked in your CV, and maybe you have also come across who asked me that question. Then how can we best point that we have experience doing that is, let's say we have conceptualized, organized scientific events, which I had done with some of my friends. I think one of Sri Lakshmi, who is also part of this talk, is here. And we had done that when we were as undergraduates. So something of those kinds of organizing Kaleidoscope and whoever has done that. These are all good examples of leading projects or, having a cross collaboration with somebody else, different group of people who have done another scientific work or something of those kinds, or maybe even, come up with a new idea or even social work as a concept, or having led anything which is independent and where you have contributed a lot or several hours is independent project. And lastly, I think it used to be called term paper. I'm not sure if it's called the same, but that is end year final project, which we used to do. And that's also an independent project. And that can also be worded carefully, not a lot of it, but you can always say, yeah, contributed to this and this, and, discovered some new bacteria. You may not have discovered a new bacteria, but let's say you found out something in those lines. So all those, and when you say that you have contributed one semester, that shows that you have led an independent project. Then communicating scientific information. Yes, you must always take chances whenever given to you to present at in your classroom, for example, or at any kind of stage, which is collegiate presentations or, intercollegiate scientific presentations or conferences, symposiums, all of those things are very valid scientific information where you're sharing something which you may have done or, which is more academic and which has science as the backbone. I mean, going and participating in maybe some kind of dem charades or something in a collegiate level is not counted as that, but those are things which you can always look out for, do them, and then highlight them. Handling multiple projects and tasks is going to be asked very often on any university, or on top, JD means job description. So any job description or university application will want you to be having the ability to handle multiple projects and tasks, because this is how the places of work usually are. You'll be doing several things and each resource is stretched thin. So that's how you have to be showing them that you can do it. And you can show that by highlighting things or experiences where you have shown that you have done internship along with your studies or education, or you have led a sports team along with achieving these grades. And these are all counted as multiple projects and tasks. So I think that's how you can do. That's how you can demonstrate that you are completely capable of doing it. And this is what will give them the kind of trust in giving a fresher a chance. So next is teamwork, team player. You have to be a team worker, team player, and there's no way around it. Nobody really likes people. I would not say likes, but at least the job description tries to rule out people who are solo workers. I mean, it's very nice in science that usually do it all alone, and that kind of nature of a person, if it's there, and it's very nice, but they may not be applicable or may not be very suitable for jobs which are necessarily asking for teamwork. And that you can show by showing that you have co-authored publications. If you have with anybody else and done a combination or contributed to science, that is teamwork. Collaborated on projects even within the lab as a team or group, or have where you have some output, all those, or working in a student body. If you're a leader of one of these organizing bodies of any of these events, or you lead several people, are all teamwork, team player examples. So we all have many of these things. It's just how we highlight them, and we have to highlight them so that somebody who is on the other end can actually notice them. So that's what we need to start doing, and that is something which comes with experience. But as I'm giving you some of these tips, I think you can already start working on your CVs to just highlight all of this. And the next, I think we are more or less at the conclusion of this talk. And what I would like to ultimately say is that we have to explore career options that very well align with your personality. As I was just talking about in the last sentence, was somebody may not want to be working with a lot of people. So then you choose carefully. That goes to the first few slides where you actually read about that job, identify by people who are working in those areas of work where you want to go to, and then ultimately decide to go ahead. Then it's always not really a good idea to jump into something and then realize it was a big mistake. So that can be avoided by prior groundwork, by going through all of that. And then understand the role well, tailor your CV, and that may be able to counter the person just asked me about, feeling, finding it difficult to cross that freshers, label, and that the threshold there. So all of those things can give you or get one leg inside the door, as we would like to call it. So that's something which you can do. And then use social platforms, please. I don't mean Facebook as much, but mostly LinkedIn. That's really a place where you can contribute to a lot of people. You can network with a lot of people who would be able to help you down the line, go through your CV for an example, give you a referral, give you a place, an easy place where you can share more information. And especially for those people who are the ones who don't like to, are shy, hesitant to speak to people in person. So that's another place where you can do. And lastly, keep your options open. As somebody just asked me, can I work in between? Yes, you can. I mean, there are a lot of places, and I have a lot of friends who have done this and have then joined PhDs, or for that matter, and have done really exceedingly well in that as well. So all of those things are keeping options open. And also, when you do decide that this is my career path, please don't be, just hell-bent on just going ahead only in that one direction. There are several things which are aligned or around that particular path you may have selected, and you can always start there and then come back, or you may just end up liking what you started as well. So keeping options open, be adaptable, be receptive to guidance. And as somebody was saying that you're not respecting the teachers, so please do that as well. So I think that is the message which I would like to give at the end of this talk. I hope it's been of some use, and now we can start taking some of the final questions. And I think it's already crossed 7:30, right? So thank you so much and very kindly listening in, and now we can have some questions.
Thank you for your insightful session, sir. Feedback form is being uploaded in the chat box, so kindly fill it within the next hour. So now let us take some remaining questions.
I have to fill the form?
No, sir, it is for the participant.
Okay.
The question is from Vartika Keshav. I was focusing on industry, and by the research I was doing, it's been very hard to find openings for freshers. How should we increase our chances to being accepted as a fresher, a pharma company maybe?
Yeah, I think I answered that question, but just to be brief on that. So you mostly try to highlight things which the job description wherever you're applying to is going to be the one which will pick you up. So let's say if they ask you, for example, do you have immunology experience? So do try to highlight in your CV that you have done an immunology course. And Beatrice ma'am used to teach us. So you do show that you have done that, and try to plan ahead. I mean, you don't want to be, you need to plan ahead also of where you want to go. So do something in those lines which will give you a better chance. Let's say you did an internship in a lab which was talking about T cells, or any of those kind which is close to immunology. So that, and highlighting those and meeting the right people and getting a network which is ready to help you, such as meeting some people outside, who could be working in the pharma sector, who may have been your alumni as well, who would just be wanting to help you. So I think those are the ways you get ahead.
Thank you, sir. The next question is from Amrita MS. Is getting industrial experience and working in a company immediately after master's better before going into the teaching field?
Okay, so teaching field, I think we have far better people to answer this, and I would not be able to really tell you, but what I was sharing, I mean, the gist of it was taking a break or working. I mean, by work, if you mean aligned to the educational qualification which you have built up, and if it's applying those things, yes, you could always use that and become or enter teaching later on. But if it's going to be dramatically different, then it may become challenging. So that's what is my take on this.
So the last question is from Andrew. After finishing our master's in microbiology, if we do MBA in healthcare, will it go hand to hand, or will it be a different way?
Andrew was the one who asked me about entrepreneurship, right? Okay. So let's say if you decide to do the MBA, but that's something which is, again, what would you gain by that is what you want to answer. I mean, what I'm trying to answer for you is something that MBA is a place where which actually people do MBA later on in their stage of life. I would not say like very late, but when they have built up sufficient experience in a field that they want to grow into. So MBAs usually are helpful tools to break the ceiling and go ahead, because many a times you hit that wall in our professional careers where you're not been going, where we find it difficult to go to senior management positions. That's where MBAs really help. And if it's done too early on and maybe not from a very good place and just right after masters, you may just be carrying a bag load of degrees, and it may not really improve your chances for anything. So you should ask yourself, what is the need of doing a master's? MBA is another master's ultimately, right after doing your master's. So that's the question you should be asking. And nobody would really give you a senior level position, even with an MBA, if you don't have any work experience. So you have to build experience in that space, and only then think about doing an MBA, because that's only going to complement this work experience. It's not going to give you, or it's not going to shield you for the lack of having no experience. So that's something which you have to consider. And when you, I think it was you or somebody, but somebody spoke about entrepreneurship. And if you do succeed in entrepreneurship, at least going through, getting to the stages of product development and management, that's considered equivalent to an MBA in most of the places, at least I am in. So that's another place where you could think about. So that's the answer to that question.
And there is another question. Could you please elaborate on what a medical science liaison job entails? From Anjali.
Yeah, so that's a pretty big, so my previous presentation was actually only on medical science liaison. So that's a rather big question, which we don't have the time for now. But what I would say is that this is best largely suitable for PhD holders and quite rarely for masters in pharmacy. And it's uncommon that masters of microbiology usually are taken as medical science liaison. So unless you're coming with a lot of experience of medical communications in some kind of a overlapping industry and or a pharmaceutical background. So that's one thing which will help you go ahead and select or unselect this option. And what medical science liaison is, large part of it is scientific communication and being able to process a lot of data of clinical trials related to your drug area. And most of us are assigned based on our past experiences, drug areas, as my work was on oncology, immunology, or cancer biology in general. So those are the kind of drugs I work on. And what I generally do is I am able to speak to the doctors and some of the patient groups and others that what are the merits which we can see and explain by the data behind that drug. So that's what a medical science liaison at the start does. Apart from that, they train the sales force, they're part of the marketing team, they are the ones who organize several events which are able to ultimately increase the commercial or the sales of the particular drug. So you are somebody who is contributing indirectly to the sales of the drug by being able to completely or very clearly communicate the data or the science or the therapeutic value behind a drug to the people whom it matters to. Those are the doctors. So that's the whole gist of medical science liaison. I hope that has also answered your question. Yeah, I think that was my answer.
Okay, sir. Thank you for replying to all the questions and doubts so patiently, sir. And I'm sure our participants will take away for the session that education isn't in one line getting degrees and not always about grades. We'll try our best to increase our EQ and not only IQ, and discover new pathways about our higher studies rather than the boundless assumptions. Thankful for such an enlightening lecture by you, sir, and also thank you for giving us your precious time to us by being here for today's session. And I also thank everyone here for being such a great audience and for such an active participation. Hoping to see you all again in the 5th session of the series on 22nd, that is tomorrow at 4 p.m. Stay healthy, stay safe, and have a good evening ahead.
Thank you so much.
Before concluding, Wajid also has a question for you.
Hi, Angad. So thank you. Satisfying or gratifying to see students performing so well. This is something that it's a treat for the teachers to see our students doing so well. Now this is the question that I'm going to represent. What Amrita had asked might be there was a little clarification required there. Now what she meant there is she is an MCZ student, just like you, how you did it. What she wanted to know is like doing a triple major with microbiology, chemistry, zoology. Will that come in a way when you have to do a master's, like a single major abroad? Okay. Yes, 3 years not qualifying for you to masters in US, as you said, but will there be a sort of an issue when you take up triple major versus students who do graduation in single major? There are states where you have BSc programs in single major, only in microbiology, honoring in microbiology, or I think that was the question, MCZ versus a single major, only microbiology or something like that. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. I think I didn't get this question. I misinterpreted it. But yeah, what now you have asked me makes sense. But again, the question answers that this is not going to be looked at or is not going to face any complication. It's going to be considered a bachelor's degree of 3 years. So that's all about it, where you can also say where you were, you can you can always add, but nobody really looks into it so much, that you were majoring in microbiology, because that seems to be the more or the most important focus of this particular, though we have all the 3 subjects, but we always, at least I say, bachelor's in microbiology. And nobody is going to be looking into it more than the number of years that you have spent getting that degree. So it's not going to be a complication. It's not going to be asked that this is 3 different majors. So yeah, so rest assured that's just going to be looked at however you would like to present it. Bachelor's of chemistry or microbiology, because you've learned equally well. So
thank you, Angad. I just have one last question for you. Please. Now, when you spoke about the alternate paths, you just gave so many avenues that are available for a student. Now, a student who wants to stop at graduation level, will he or she fits into those alternative paths? Question 1. Will a student after masters, will a student fit in those alternate paths that you shared, or is it required for a student to do a PhD and do a better a job in terms of those alternate paths? So if you could just throw certain light, because now you have completed all 3, like graduation to post graduation, PhD, and then the postdoc. Now if you had to be in a position where I want to take any of those jobs, am I prepared to do those after my graduation, or no, I need to do a master's to fit myself well there, or do I need a PhD to fit myself well there, or a postdoc was required for you to there? So what is the place where they should stop and then move to this sort of paths? If you could just throw a little light on that, would be a great help. Yeah. Hope I made myself clear.
Thank you, sir. No, that's a very good question, and I perhaps have not shown that light, and it's really important to ask me this question. So let's just go. That's why I opened up this list here, and this is not an exhaustive list anyway, because this is just some of the major things, and you could be doing several more, which I can also send later on. But let's just go by one quickly. And medical affairs is something which is more or less going to be asking for a PhD. So usually bachelor's is totally ruled out in this case, and masters could make it with pharma degrees, but I'm not sure with microbiology. And I'm not very certain of how the Indian environment of pharmas is as well. But in my place, it's not applicable. Scientific communications, yes, bachelor students could do it, and they may not get the top. I mean, they may certainly start at very junior levels. And if they have a flair for writing, they can always go to places. I can just give you one example called Cactus Communications, wherein you can start gaining more experience by editing and writing, and they give you several assignments. So bachelors can do it, masters can do it, PhDs can do it as well. So they would certainly like to go masters and PhD, but if a bachelor is able to prove their worth and past experience, yes, they can get a chance. There are several, even in Bangalore, I think, which require scientific communication. Industry research scientists, bachelors, no. You cannot do mostly after that, and you would have to have a master's more or less. And bachelor's, you can then, if you really want to do, you can become a research assistant in many of the universities, or even some research labs have research assistants. And they usually don't do a lot of research, but they can start, shadowing and learning. But this is going to be very difficult for bachelors. But masters and PhDs, yes. Many masters are are taking this as a career option. Technical medical writing, again, I would say that masters, medical writing, I have from strangers. I think one of our friends was also doing medical writing way early on. So that's possible even after bachelor's, again, by showing your flair and past experience. But if you go to a professional place and a bigger place, they may expect a master's at least. But if you do gain experience, then you can aim for bigger roles. But bachelors can also enter. Biotech entrepreneurship, anybody, even if a child has an idea, can enter. So this has no age and no education. And project management also depends on the place that you are in. And you may, many places may even prefer undergraduates. For management level, they may not prefer undergraduate, but maybe at least undergraduates who have built up some past experience at a lower or more junior roles could go into project management. And business development, yes, a lot of bachelor students can do business development because that's mostly scouring new businesses, growing it. So that requires younger people and, who are more suitable to learn quicker and faster. Healthcare consulting, I know only of the more of the big firms, and they usually will take masters and PhDs. So bachelor here in India's context, I'm not certain, may be ruled out. And market research analyst, anybody who can analyze is good with data, and bachelors, masters, PhDs, all are quite welcome. Patent law would perhaps require somebody with a more advanced degree in that particular science that they're responding. I know only of PhD friends who went on from postdoc to do patent law, but you can always start with a law degree after bachelor's as well. So you can combine that, and that is possible with bachelor's. It may just be slightly lengthy, and you may have to go through a more intensive, or you may have to go through a whole law degree. I'm not certain, but for the people who are an advanced degree, they can go in for without going through the law degree. I think that's what this could be. Teaching bachelor's, yes. No, I don't think so. So maybe at least master's and PhD for teaching. And quality control and assurance, I would not comment. I'm not very certain. So maybe bachelors can fit in, but not certain. But regulatory affairs, yes, this requires also usually masters. And this, I would say, is something which is very detail oriented and has a lot of information to be read and processed. So they would prefer masters and PhDs here, and bachelors may not get anything in the regulatory affairs to start with until or unless they have something very close to it with experience. Does that help?
Definitely. Thank you very much, Angad. You elaborated almost all the parts for the students.
No problem. Thank you so much.
Angad, we have a question from Beatrice ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Angad, it may be a little away from this topic, as you had did your 3 years, bachelor's in the 3 major subjects. And I'm sure you're aware of the National Educational Policy bringing 2 years as a major course instead of 3. And assume now under university status, some colleges go for a single major. And with your knowledge and experience, what is your take on this? If it is a 2 or a single major, like a shift now, how it would benefit? And what do you think? I mean, your thoughts on this, please.
Okay,
since you did a triple major, that's why.
So, I mean, you're saying that the focus will now become only in one subject, like instead of MCZ, it will be only microbiology?
Yeah, what happens is now the first year BSc students have a 2 major system. Okay, they have either microbiology and chemistry, microbiology and botany that they have chosen, or microbiology and zoology. Now, ultimately, it may come even down, I'm just saying, to a single major, the way the things are going. So from your experience and your that you have given so much, I just wanted to know how it would benefit the students and, go ahead.
Okay, so my personal, I have not kept in touch with what's happening a lot.
Your personal view.
Yeah, so what I would say that what has helped me in the past was having the knowledge of all those subjects. Zoology, I'm not certain how much I applied in the future, but chemistry, certainly I did apply. And that's something which forms a major crux of biochemistry, which I do and a lot of people would pursue ahead. So, and microbiology as well. So I think having an exposure when there is, how much would you do for 3 years in microbiology? Then you would not be doing a master's or what? But by being able to put the 3 together and concentrating, or at least 2 together, would be the best way ahead for, in my opinion, because that gives a person the opportunity to choose and gives the perspective of what all is being done, how to combine, and makes them creative. I think if they were just stuck with one subject, then they may have a very narrowed path or narrowed view of what lies ahead. So I think that's important, in my opinion, that there will be more exposure given with more subjects. Either you can maybe make it instead of all of them being put in major in every year, maybe 1 year or half a semester could be on an elective like a microbiology, which you can choose, or something of that kind, with a major focus being on whatever is decided, let's say chemistry. But just eliminating out of the 3 years all of these and concentrating 1 year could be a drawback. That's my personal opinion.
Thank you, Angad.
Thank you.
And again, the 3 years going to become 4 years. It's going to be an honors now. So that's the shift that's happening in the Indian education system. From a 3-year major, it might become like 3 year you would get a graduation, but you can also go for 4 year where you would be given an honors program. So
Okay,
where students can go for PhD straight away from 4 years to PhD if they want, or they still want to do. They don't want to go for PhD, but they want to do a master's. 1 year master's also is possible. That's something the new avenue that that NEP has offered us. So that is something that we are deliberating upon. So hence, ma'am asked you in this sort of context. So it's single major microbiology for 4 years honors would do, or chemistry, as you said, would obviously support the subject microbiology. Yeah.
I think it's a nice thing. So shifting towards the US, that we're making people who are doing bachelors then being directly eligible to go directly to their PhDs in the next places wherever this kind of 12+4 kind of rule is. So that would just harmonize the education. I think that's one approach to it. But choosing and sticking to one, let's say if I was stuck with chemistry for 4 years, I would have been really bored. But I don't know. So in my opinion, having the exposure to things could be good. And either that's via electives or by introducing some compulsory modules. So I think that's always going to add perspective, and somebody can contribute to many fields combining this knowledge. So that's mine. But it's nice to know that things are changing in a different path. And yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So is there, would there be any more questions?
So I think this is the end of the discussion. So I now request everyone to please turn on their videos for a group photo.
I should stop sharing it?
Yes, Angad, it would be better.
So Angad, it was great having you with us.
Yes, sir. It's very nice seeing all of you, Jyoti ma'am, Beatrice ma'am. It's very nice. And it's nice that the education is evolving, it's growing. So I'm very happy to see all of these introduced. We didn't have it, but now that there is this introduction of these concepts and alumni coming, speaking, I think it's going to give these students a lot of, places that they can go to and learn. So it's very nice. And you can all stay connected via LinkedIn. I usually talk only about LinkedIn because that's the only thing I use. So
we're on the verge of becoming university. So SJC to SJU. So hence a lot of changes, I think, might have been told, but yeah.
Oh, wow. Weren't we a university before? We were autonomous.
It wasn't. We were autonomous, but
okay.
The next step from autonomous to university. Yeah.
That's great.
And